Start a small business. No need to work 40, 50 hours a week, slaving your life away. Obtain financial freedom, be your own boss, and create your own destiny. Moguls are the new superstars. The path to country club membership and a leased Mercedes-Benz is paved in gold as you take your business trips to Orlando or Vegas. Validation from your in-laws is just an LLC and Facebook business page away. At least, that's what they tell you anyways. Through social media, websites, and targeted ads, you're sold an image. Small business owners seem to walk on water. You'd think you're the last person on earth working a regular job with a regular boss. But there's trouble in paradise, and its name is in over your head. People start looking to start their own business, don't know what they don't know. But that's why we started our Small Business Confidential podcast, to share what we've learned from years of experience. There's not a lot of people in on this, so remember, dear podcast listeners, you heard it here first, off the record, on the QT, and very hush-hush.
Okay, this is A'marri. I don't usually do the intros. I'm more behind-the-scenes engineer, but I'm here with Brook today, and we're going to be just kind of talking, catching up on the past week, and, you know, just giving the ins and outs of what's been going on at the office, problems we ran into, solutions we came up with, and, you know, just kind of talking. So how you doing today, Brook?
Good, yeah. It's Thursday. So Thursday for me has been like, I always find like my day in the morning where I'm just really like organizing, like okay, what's 100% done?
Mm-hmm.
What do I have to do second half of the day? And then a big organization, like time block in the afternoon for preparing for Friday.
Right.
So Friday for us, for the listeners out there, especially for me and A'marri, we're pretty much in meetings from like 9:30 to like noon, where we kind of have our office schedule board meeting, which is all done on Google Meet. And then we meet with all the foremen at 11 to go over the foreman schedule board. And then for me, I usually, take my break earlier in the day, Friday, after that schedule board meeting. And then I'm working on cash flow second half of the day on Friday. So far, my day has just been a lot of just cleaning things up.
Right.
Organizing things. I kind of compare it to like if you've got like a spare bedroom and like you're moving stuff around and you're, hey, you move this to this room, this to this room. That room might look on Thursday a little unorganized. So it's kind of taking that time to, centralize stuff, throw stuff out,
Right.
move things to, the new pile.
Right.
So that's pretty much my day, how it's been so far.
Nice.
What about you?
My Thursday today feels like a Tuesday. And I say that because, as we've talked about before, we're currently redoing our whole software system, our applications. It's all proprietary. And so we're planning one section of it today, myself and Jonah, with feedback from Brook, and just talking about, okay, how is this going to look? Here's how it currently looks. Here's how it's most likely going to look in the future once this stuff is done. And so that was something I was really planning to do earlier in the week, but some stuff came up. So we didn't have a chance to really get into that until today. So it's been a little bit more like that's kind of got my mind in a more of like what we do normally in the beginning of the week, that planning stage. So now it's kind of more so talking about, okay, more so how's tomorrow, but mainly how's the, next week really going to look like. And so that was interesting. We have to talk a lot about how that's going to impact, like, I won't say a lot, but we'll have to talk again about how that's going to impact the schedule, this whole project. And it's like, it's good stuff, once you start getting more specific about how this stuff is going to look, how much time it's going to take. But it's also, I don't want to say I'm anxious, but I'm more so like, okay, how is this all going to shake out? There being so many compartments and components, I should say, to more of the expenses portion of the application. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. I'm going to make sure I'm, really talking to Jonah a lot. There's certain things I have to ask you about when you're available. So it's like a mix of like interesting, like exciting, but also like want to make sure you're not going off the road with that stuff too. So,
that kind of leads me to, there's this quote, and I've heard this quote before, but I was on a run last night and I don't really listen to music anymore when I run, just because I listen to so much music for other stuff, but just a lot of podcasts. And I heard this quote a lot of times, but you know how sometimes like you hear a quote and it just like hits when you've heard it 1,000 times, but then you hear it and you're kind of in that mindset and then you're like, that makes so much sense.
Right.
And for me, and this kind of relates to what you're going through, what I go through, like what a lot of, productive people out there who are listening to this, what they go through. It's that famous Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And there's another quote, I don't know it exactly, but Mark Cuban, said, in his opinion, one of the most consistent traits successful people in business have is their ability to adapt. And those kind of, in my opinion, those two quotes kind of go hand in hand, where we're organizing your to-do list for the programmer. I'm organizing my list for cash flow, for forming meetings for these houses that we're selling. It's great if you have a plan, but when someone calls off work, if the programmer is sick for 3 days, if a house gets delayed in closing because of a finance issue, you have to almost like plan for that.
Right.
And be ready to adapt.
Right.
So I think for me, like I always just kind of, and I'm just throwing out quotes left and right, but I throw them out left and right because in my opinion, they make sense to me. Hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Right.
Plan for someone calling off work. Plan for a house getting delayed because, you don't really need to send this one document to a title company, but maybe you should.
Right.
Take that extra step, send it out, and just, I always will, especially too now, I'm dealing with like 3 different companies handling our title because, we're selling a couple different houses. In the past, I had one title company and it was easy to just email him.
Right.
But now, we got 2 or 3 other companies and I'm always ending my emails with, we're closing on this day. I've sent you everything you need. If there's anything else, please let me know by end of the day on Friday.
Right.
And that just tells them, okay, yeah, this guy's on top of his shit.
Right.
And it helps me know if they email back, say, Brook, we're good. See you on Thursday.
Right.
Then I know, okay, I'm done. I crossed off the point of sale compliance list. I crossed off this. I crossed off this. But you're always just kind of having that sixth sense mentality of like, okay, what could go wrong here?
Right.
We're in the contracting business. If we've got 5 days of sun and there's that one day on Thursday where, 65% chance of rain around 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a plan for Thursday. What's the backup plan?
Right.
So when, not if, but when it rains on that Thursday or the next Thursday or any other day where there's a chance, you can adapt and be like, okay, we were going to be here. We're switching it up. You're going to be off.
Right.
You're going to be here. You're going to be here. Trains are running on time.
Right.
So I think that's just that's a trait that like highly successful people need to have. And, I'm not saying that I'm some highly successful business owner, but, I'm just constantly thinking of like all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's, it can be a blessing and it can also be a curse where it might kind of creep into like my personal life, where, you know, sometimes my wife will be like, no, like we're all good. Like,
Right.
but I'm always kind of like, well, no, like the babysitter, the nanny could get sick. Like, what's our plan?
Right.
I'd rather be like that
Yeah.
and at least have like a semblance of a backup plan
Right.
than just to kind of, you know, hope for the best.
Right.
Or not hope for the best, plan for the best.
Right. I agree. Yeah. And we were talking as a group earlier this week just about, you know, the future of the company and, you know, where do we see us going? How do we get there? You know, one of the things that came up was like, where those moments where it does rain or when someone doesn't do what they were supposed to do and that takes up your time as a supervisor and you could be doing other things, like where are all those moments coming from that are stopping you from being able to do other things that could be more productive for creating that future, prosperous future for the company? Exactly what you're talking about, planning for the worst, is, I think, just an essential tool that we need as supervisors, project managers, you know, whatever title you want to use, just because, you know, Mike, he'll always say, like, where are the time wasters? Whether that's a customer who's just kind of looking around for estimates, whether that's one employee who, you know, always shows up late, has a poor attitude, doesn't do what they're supposed to do. It's like, what are those things and how do you make structural changes to address those things and solve those problems quickly? So then people like you can have more time to think about the future of the company and not just kind of putting out all these little fires. And you have to do that. Things are going to come up. You have to, but it does beg questions of, okay, well, what structurally on a more bigger picture can be changed or adjusted to help not have to, you know, because you want to watch that too. You don't want to just always be putting out little fires and never ask the question, well, is this what we really should be doing? Is there a better way to do this? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I just got out of a meeting 20 minutes ago where we were reviewing 2 employees, their schedule for next week. And just because they're going out of town tomorrow. And the one thing that I was picking up on and Mike was picking up on is really narrowing down, okay, what are the priorities?
right.
Like, if your priorities are 20 things, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
Like, you should have, you know, 4 or 5. Like, you should be able to count your priorities, like, on your fingers.
Right.
And then realizing what are the things that are just sucking up your time.
Right.
And those things that are sucking up your time, you either need to really kind of not take a study and look at it, but be like, okay, listen, I need to assign this to somebody else.
Right.
It's important, but I just don't have time this week to do this. Or maybe you look at it and be like, it's not worth my time.
Right.
It's not worth my time. It's not worth our company's time.
Right.
We're done. So whether that's an estimate or trying to book a house, you know, and someone's saying, yeah, you know, I'll think about it, email you back 2 days later. Hey, how about this? You know, how about, like, that always happens.
Right.
And you're kind of just being an assassin with your time and say, hey, Mrs. Brown, here's the estimate. You know, we're starting to book up for spring. Let me know if you have any questions. And if she emails you back and say, okay, great, because I get this all the time. Can you itemize this? Can you break this down? Before, I would have panic attacks and be like, well, shit, like, I'm going to have to break this down. I'm going to have to itemize this. How do I itemize my management time?
Right.
How do I itemize the sales time?
Right.
You know, Mike said, well, you just tell her no. And this is 4 or 5 years ago. And I started to get that question a lot from customers.
Right.
And I finally just learned, I was like, I'm just going to tell them when I send the estimate, I'm going to say, hey, here's the estimate for all the work. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm unable to itemize this.
Right.
Have a great weekend.
Right. It's all there.
It's all right there.
Right.
But I realized that was sucking up a lot of my time.
Yeah.
not necessarily like my physical time of like typing out an email, but just like my mental time.
Right.
Where I'd be thinking about it and then I would be half-assing something else.
Right.
Which would lead to a problem there.
Yeah.
So it's had just this rippling effect.
Just compounding anxiety and just needless stress.
It was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for some people, they struggle with that, but that's where that person's manager has to step in.
Right.
And say, hey, listen, this is the format for how I want you scripting your schedule.
Right.
I expect this updated every day, and I expect this section updated every week.
Right.
If you're going out of town on a Friday when we normally meet, we need to meet on Thursday. So you're trying to set as many like rules, things to follow, and then you assume that they're not going to do it.
Right.
And you're checking it and you're following up on it. And after a couple of weeks, couple of months where they're just become this habit.
Yeah.
Rinse, wash, repeat. Then you can say, okay, I don't have to watch them.
Right.
I don't have to watch that person.
Right. You want everyone kind of being the master of their own space. I've been kind of having a crash course in that, working with Mike on, some of the foreman's estimates, where it's just like, okay, be just very black and white about it. Is there a decision here when I'm going through like the notes for each estimate, or is it just like all this passive language and it's just, just kind of noise? And that's been kind of helping, I guess, teach me about how do you close, which is something that I'm still learning about, learning from you, learning from Mike, and just being able to make those decisions, because every passive, undecided thing, like you said, is just compounding all that anxiety and stress. And it's just all this noise in your mind that's just making you less productive.
Yeah.
So
hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back.
If you enjoy listening to our Small Business Confidential podcast, we're sure you'll enjoy our first podcast, The Cleveland Real Estate Investor. We give outside investors an inside look into the real estate market in Cleveland. Cleveland has been on the rise, and investors from all over see those cheap prices and salivate. Our job is to educate those investors and steer them in the right direction with several years of experience of how to do it right and many examples of how to do it wrong. Find the Cleveland Real Estate Investor podcast on any app you listen to your podcast today.
Yeah, I went through this yesterday where someone was complaining about someone's work. And the person who was telling me this was involved in this project. And they were just kind of dumping this on me.
Right.
And I said, yeah, I checked their work and, I'd appreciate it if you talked to him about his work. So he's dumping this on me.
Right.
3-4 years ago, I would have said, okay, yeah.
Right.
I'll talk to him.
Right.
My response is, you're going to meet with this person. You're going to show him what you're seeing. I haven't seen this. I don't even know, you're running this project. And I was like, you're going to show him.
Right.
You're going to tell him, hey, you didn't do this right.
Right.
And if there's a problem, then yeah, you can call me.
Right.
And we can meet about it.
Right.
And I could tell that person was like, shit, I didn't want to have to do that.
Right.
I just wanted to have someone else do this.
Right.
But I saw that a mile away.
Oh, yeah.
What? I got to add this to my list of stuff? I don't have time.
Right.
I got to,
It's such a waste of time. In my experience, I'll go in, especially because, I'm more on the administrative side. A lot of this stuff I don't know as far as like renovations, construction, repairs. I can tell you just from like a common sense perspective from a normal person, but a lot of the nitty gritty details, somebody can tell me, well, I did it this way because of this. And it's just like, well, is that the way that they told you to do it? And you start getting down the rabbit hole, and then now you're hearing their complaints about the other person. It's just like a monumental waste of time.
Yeah.
You saw the problem, you handle it right there in the moment that you're seeing it. don't let it just keep drifting off and you're talking to everyone else about it. It's just like, once again, just compounding anxiety, compounding stress. It's like, I feel like a lot of people just create their own stress, create their own problems, and then pass it on to other people like a disease.
Yeah, like I know Mike uses this analogy a lot, and it's a really good analogy. Like in football, there's a term for you're running north-south.
Right.
You're either moving forward, you're moving backwards.
Right.
You're not dancing around going east-west. You have a mission. Your mission is to plow forward.
Right.
Sometimes you're going to hit a wall and you're going to fall back.
Right.
Sometimes you're going to make some progress, but not enough progress.
Right.
Sometimes you're just going to, before you know it, you're going from the 1 yard line to the end zone.
Right.
But that takes just that constant moving the ball forward.
Right.
And I think for anyone out there who's managing projects or managing stuff at home, you're either moving forward or you're taking whatever that thing is and being like, this is not worth my time.
Right.
This is not worth my time. It's not worth my business's time. It's not making me any money.
Right.
Why am I doing this? And it could be the most minor thing.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the one employee who's just bringing everyone down.
Right.
And you're having meetings about it. It could be a customer where it's just every day little sticky notes out being like, I need you to touch up here, touch up here, touch up here, touch up here. Soon you've spent 50 hours on touch-ups.
Right.
Where you should have said, hey, you know what? This is the best that we can do.
Right.
Okay. If you want, a more elaborate project, that's not what we estimated for.
Right.
That's not what's on the estimate. That's not what you emailed us about. And just prepare yourself for some blowback.
Right.
But at least you're moving forward.
You're right. Yeah. Not just being passive. A lot of the stuff, I feel like it's simple. And then emotions come into play, and then it makes it feel more complicated than it is. But it's like you saying earlier, it's just, no, I'm not itemizing.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that.
There's that really good quote in AA. It's not easy, it's simple.
Right.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's really hard.
Right.
In simplicity, it's like, all right, I got to go out and sell 5 jobs.
Right.
Seems simple.
Right.
Sometimes it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
In February, it's pretty hard.
Yeah.
So it's, it's being aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's staying organized. It's delegating to employees, people that you trust, to be like, hey, I need you to get this done.
Right.
And when they don't get it done, you need to talk to them.
Right.
Say, hey, listen, what happened here?
Right.
And they might say, hey, I got swamped here, but I know it's Thursday. I'm going to work on it on Friday morning. Okay.
Right.
But Friday morning, you meet with them and be like, we good?
Right.
We done?
Right.
And if they say, well, I got tied up with this, that's when you say, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
We need to meet about this. What is sucking your time up?
Right.
And it's usually just a bunch of bullshit. And it's like,
Yeah, you start following that thread.
that's like, oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. This is where your time
This
is going.
makes sense now. Or, well, you're not doing that.
Right.
Not doing that. You're leaving at 4:30 when you're supposed to be here until 5.
Right.
Like, it's funny. Like, I was talking to a friend and, he asked me, because like, when do you start work?
Mm-hmm.
When do you end work? And I was really kind of just thinking about it. And I got he's almost a year old baby, family business. I've been working here since I was 12.
Mm-hmm.
Work doesn't really stop.
Right.
I might be leaving to go pick my son up at 4:30.
Right.
But once bath time's over, whip the laptop out,
Right.
sending emails, getting back. Well, so you're just like adjusting. I might go teach a spin class at night, but like, I'm coming back and it's like, okay, I got to text our realtor back. I got to text A'marri back. I got to do this. So it's like, I'm just kind of constantly just like on.
Right.
And even on like the weekends, it's like, I might not have like a script and a schedule, but like if Mike calls me and says, I need you to do an estimate Saturday at noon, it's like, okay.
Right.
Hey, I got to take my son to the doctor at 11. I can do it at 12:30.
Right.
He's not going to be like, no.
Right.
But he's going to be like, okay. So it's like, I think for people out there who have that 9 to 5 job, you know, where it's like, that's great. You know,
Right.
there's sometimes I wish that I had that,
Mm-hmm.
but then I wouldn't have the flexibility in my schedule
Right.
to go for a run on my lunch break
Right.
or be able to pick my son up if the babysitter calls and says, you know, I have an emergency. I need you here at 3:30.
Right.
Like, I'm very fortunate and grateful that I'm in this position.
Mm-hmm.
But that means that, okay, you're doing this now, but you're working till
Right.
whenever you need to be done working.
Right.
You know, it's not like, it's like, oh, it's 7 o'clock.
Punching out.
I'm done. It's
Yeah.
I'm done when I send out what I need to send out.
Right. When my work that was needed to be done today is done today.
So what am I going to do? Leave my son up there? So I got to go.
Yeah. Right.
You know? And so there's a lot of really great benefits to that. And, you know, but that also means, hey, there might be a Saturday night.
Right.
There's a leak in a property.
Right.
I'm going over there.
Right.
And that's just part of the job,
Yeah.
you know? So
That was something that, you know, when I first started working here, it was like, it was just, I don't know. It was the concept of that was like strange to me. I mean, everything was strange. This is my first job. But over time, something just kind of clicked where it was just like, I'm saving myself so much stress a lot of the times by just having that clear-headed moment, like at a 6 or a 7 o'clock p.m., where you don't have all the noise of the phone ringing, text messages coming in, meetings, this and that, and you post-workout, everything, and you're just kind of going through your emails, going through your schedule board, going through the clipboard, and your mind is clear, and you're just able to go through and say, oops, let me do this, you know, in preparation for tomorrow or preparation for next week. And it's just, that time for me, it's been invaluable since getting out of the brainwashing of like, hey, after 5 o'clock, I'm done. It's like, no, like after 5 o'clock, that 6, 7 o'clock is like a perfect opportunity to just kind of go through everything. And there's no, I mean, there might be some interruptions that, you know, especially if you're like working from home or whatever, just stuff going on, but, you know, you don't have nearly as much, you know, when you're in the office and people coming up to your desk every half hour and whatever, just kind of clear the mind, go through. We talk about like, that's when ideas come up. You know, we like, hey, we were doing all this talking about this and that. Like, what if we just did this, you know? So that stuff, that time frame, or even like on a Saturday or something like that, like I always think about it like I'm looking out for my future self in a sense, you know, versus, nah, I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'll just deal with that, you know, 9 o'clock or 8:30 or whatever tomorrow.
yeah.
And then you just get hit with a shitstorm.
No, and like there's a lot of benefits to having flexibility in your schedule, but you better be organized.
Yeah.
You better be like, I always try to like, let's say like I plan to do a big, like long, like run on a Friday after those big meetings.
Right.
I'm at least making sure that I'm emailing, you know, Mike, other people, be like, hey, I know we still have to talk about this. Let's shoot for 2 o'clock. Does that work?
Right.
And they're going to be like, yeah, hey, no, I need to meet like now. It's like, okay, yeah, let's meet now.
Right.
You know, versus like not doing that,
Right.
going for a run.
Right.
And then that person is driving by and seeing you and you're like, oh shit, this doesn't look good. You know, because that's happened. And like my run will just be panicked.
Yeah. Right.
And I'll just be like, it actually makes you run faster.
Heart rate's going up.
And sometimes they'll be like, hey, how was your run?
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, fuck.
Right.
And sometimes I'll be like, oh, I saw you driving in the neighborhood. And like, no, I was over here.
Right.
So it could have been like a totally different person.
Yeah. Right.
But at least like I've just learned that like I've learned a couple of things. One, after 4 or 5 hours, I need a break.
Right.
I'm more productive
Right.
that way. That works. Seems to work for Mike. Seems to work for, you know, the company.
Right.
And two, it's just staying on top of your shit and being like, hey, you know what? Making sure, okay, are we good to talk at 2? Here's my punch list.
Right.
Mike, I still want to meet with you at 3:30. Does that work?
Right.
You're just, you're just again, you're just moving forward.
Right.
And just be willing to adapt.
Right.
Be willing to be like someone say, hey, what, something came up. Can we meet, at 5?
Right.
It's like, yeah, okay.
Right.
I won't be in front of my computer. I'll be on the road, but give me a call.
Right. You want to be structured, disciplined, but still flexible, just because that's what life is. Life is not, everything goes exactly how you think it's going to go. It's always going to be things that come up.
Right.
But, you want to be flexible. You don't want it to be chaotic either. So
you want to allow yourself time in the day time to think.
Right.
Time to plan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of the times, like, I'll try to save certain tasks for like in the afternoon.
Right.
I mean, like, I don't need to do this at the office. When I'm at the office, I want to make sure I'm talking to A'marri.
Right.
I'm meeting with foreman.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on, the job module. I'm looking at stuff there. But no, like emailing a realtor back, emailing these people spreadsheets. No, I can do that. That's perfect, like second half
Right.
of the day work. But like when I'm here in the office, first half of the day, I'm trying to make sure I'm getting all the stuff done that I need to while I'm physically here.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. This is a good little
Yeah.
therapy sesh.
Yeah, right. That was good. Be an assassin, be decisive, structured, yet flexible.
And just like I heard this too on my run where this guy, he was saying how every time he has a problem come up at work, he says, awesome, good.
Right.
And it's like, wow, what? And he explained, he's like, no, that's good. That means I'm learning.
Right.
Great. I have a problem. I can fix this.
Right.
And something happens when you have a problem and you fix it, you feel fucking great.
Right.
And you feel like, okay, I got that done. I can get this done now.
Right.
But just
100%.
just brace yourself when, a problem comes up. You say, all right, good.
Right.
Let's do this.
Right. An opportunity.
So, and it's only going to make you better, sharper. So, yeah. All right. Good talk.
All right. Thanks, Brooke. Thanks to all our listeners. Hope there was a couple takeaways for you, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Small Business Confidential. To support, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also add our podcast to your favorite streaming services. Everything is appreciated, and we'll be back soon with another episode and upload schedule. The person voicing the intro's name is Travis Riley. Thank you, Travis. And the music was done by our engineer, me, A'marri.